All right, can you hear me? Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Chris Ad, for allowing me to go last today when everybody wants to leave. So I'm just gonna do every other slide. It's like your patient who comes in a half hour late where you clean every other tooth. We can get you done, but we're gonna get out of here. So that's me and my wife, Diane, my bride. I'm glad she came with me today. She wasn't sure she wanted to come, but she did. That's actually in Croatia. I don't know if anybody's ever been there, but it's an awesome place to go. On the right, my our three kids. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself as we go along, because I think it's important to know. I mean, everybody who's been up here is awesome. I mean, I realized as I was sitting there why I am going last today. I am the Valium that's going to soothe everybody's headache. I mean, if you're like me, when you sit through anything that's kind of new, I guess, do we have people that are not Chris Ad clients here today? Do we have any? Or am I preaching to the choir to everybody? All Chris Ad? No? Okay. So anyway, I found myself sitting over there getting kind of stressed because I've been at it for a couple years now with Chris Ad, and we're getting there. We are. Things are moving along. But I sit there and my wife tells me, stop tapping. I just start getting stressed because of the things that I know that we're not doing or that we're working towards. So anyway, if you're like me, you're a little stressed, just take a breath, calm down. It's gonna be okay. Oops, did I do it again? Oh, I'm sorry, getting used to this. Go back. Okay, so again, real quick, as Andrea said, my dad was a dentist. I'm going to talk a little bit about that, getting started working with Chris Ad. Again, why me? These people who went ahead of me, $5 million, $7 million, $8 million, I don't know. I mean, that just kind of blows my mind. But, I think a lot of people are like me in my practice, practicing for 30 years. How can you be practicing for 30 years when you're only 35 years old? But, I'm not as young as I used to be. So I think I'm a lot like most people in that before you start with Chris Ad, okay? Been working one model and just kind of, steady every year, basically. Not up, not down. So I was kind of surprised they asked me to speak because I really didn't think I was worthy to do this here yet. I know how successful most of these people are, but they keep assuring me that I'm doing great. So I feel good about that. And we've increased quite a bit. And I actually, last year when we hired our associate, I kept looking at the numbers. I'm like, wow, this stuff really works. So anyway, I'll just keep going. I said I was gonna keep it short. I'm not a manager, okay? Fortunately or unfortunately, I spend every day in my practice, okay? And I think, again, that's like a lot of people. Although as I'm getting older, I do worry, and I think that there's older dentists out here. I mean, so much of us, I have to wear my glasses to read my notes. My hands don't shake too much yet, so I'm still good there. But, at some point, we may not be able to do our job, may not be able to do everything. So for me, that's been a real side benefit, is that if it's just you and things start to go south, you're kind of out of luck. So if you don't have an associate or something in place, I think you're running the risk that things could go bad on you. Again, and dentistry is a tough job too. I don't know if anybody's ever read the book The E-Myth. And in that book they talk about, in business, the three parts of it is you're an entrepreneur, a manager, and a technician. Now dentists, what are we? We're technicians, right? Hygienists, that's what we do. I don't think there's any, you can be any more technical with any job. So, but we have to do the other parts, unless you're a full-time manager, which, I think most people aren't. So we're in there working, have to manage, and then the entrepreneur part is, that I can do this, I can do this, I can make this better. So again, really good at technical stuff. I know for me, not so good at some of the other stuff. So my dad was a dentist. He hated his job for a long time. So why am I a dentist? It's kind of crazy. I can remember being a kid, and people would say, who's going to be a dentist like Dad? And I'd say, not me. And, but you grow up, things happen. I think like most kids, I want to be a baseball player. Although nowadays, kids don't want to play baseball. It's too boring. They want to do something else. You can run around. But, that didn't quite pan out, so I had to go to Plan B. And Plan B actually wasn't being a dentist either. So eventually, when I got to college, had some experiences that made me realize, a lot of what we do as a dentist, it really is just, we have to relate to people, okay? And I'm not an extrovert. Like, if we were in a room, if I go to this thing afterwards tonight, I'm not gonna know everybody's name when we leave there. Some people will, they'll know everybody, at the function that they're having. But I found that I could relate to people, understand people, talk to people. And so much of what we do is talking to people. Granted, we have to do our dentistry, but if people don't understand what we're talking about, they have no idea. So anyway, I decided to go to dental school. I told my folks. I was halfway through college. Thought they'd be psyched. Mom told me not to do it. She said, because my mom passed in October, but when they went to dental school, it was different than when I went, okay? They had nothing. They had ended up with a baby, even though my dad, he worked all the time, and went to school. And it was, dental school, again, at least for me, dental school was a friggin' nightmare, okay? In that, not the work, just the stress. Again, maybe where I went to school. But I used to say when I was in dental school that, the Marines, I think they would tear people down and then build them back up. In dental school, they tore us down. Okay, and then they forgot the other part. So, wasn't a lot of fun. As a 20-year-old, my blood pressure was 150/90. We're learning how to read blood pressure, and the nurse said, "You need to get checked." And I said, "No." I said, 2 years ago, it was 108/whatever, and this is dental school, okay? At some point, God willing, I'm going to be out of here, and my blood pressure will be good again. And it is. But, I said my dad hated practicing dentistry. He didn't always hate it. He used to say to me that, the first 10 years were good, next 10 were okay, last 10, not good. John said he wasn't going to swear, but I counted at least a couple times that he swore today. And so my dad, when I say, as I got older, say, "Dad, how's work?" Same old shit. Now, it maybe wasn't the right job for him because, like I said, communication is the key. My dad's a great guy. He was an awesome dentist. But he would always remember, and maybe that's a flaw that we have as dentists. I found myself in it too, but he would remember the bad stuff. He still remembers. My dad's 89 years old. He'll say, "Yeah, I remember I made that person a set of dentures, and it was $100. They thought it was too much. They got pissed, and they left." This was 40 years ago, So, but lo and behold, went to dental school. There I am. So I get out of dental school and open up with my dad. And we'll see here, we got this beautiful little building here. That's Dad on the left. That's me with that awesome 80s mullet. Look at that. How did I go from there to here? So when I started working with my dad, the patient, I think he hasn't been in recently, I was thinking about that today. He used to say to my father, he said, "If you hold him, I'll cut it for you." Cut my hair, And he used to joke because my hair was too long. But anyway, so we had this old building my father practiced in. It was 20 by 25 feet. And when he was thinking of building a new one anyway, and when I went to dental school, he definitely decided to. So we ended up building a whole new building in the same location. So early on, I guess, practice philosophy. My practice philosophy, I'm sure, is the same as everybody's in here. You treat people the way you want to be treated. It's pretty simple when you do that. I'd never do anything on somebody that I wouldn't do on myself, my wife, and I tell people that. It's really easy to do dentistry when you're doing it that way. Obviously, we treat people right. Our staff has been there. I have one hygienist who always likes to remind the patient she's been there longer than I have, but they've all been there forever, and the only reason somebody hasn't been there for a long time is because we've expanded and hired more people. So, culture, I'm not going to get into all that stuff. We treat our patients right, we treat our staff right, and we have really nice patients. That's the thing I found. I tell people, it seems like the people that are really mean and nasty, they quit coming to us. I think they realized that we're just too nice for them, and they don't want to come to us anymore. So that's been a good thing. I mean, we always have a couple, but, I think everybody does. So anyway, said Dad hated doing the job. And I realized early on that I could end up like my dad, and I didn't want that. So what did I decide to do? Well, at the time, I thought that the way to do it is just to be a better dentist, and learn more. I went to Mike Schuster, I don't even know if he's still in Arizona, but he called it Center for Professional Development, and they talked about the business side of it and creating systems, and we did. I went to Pankey and Dawson, the people that nobody's ever heard of outside of dentistry. And the Pankey model, it's interesting, when they're talking about this morning about, the whole thing with hygiene is so true with what John and Chris is talking about. I remember one time when I was at Pankey Institute, they had in the evening, and I don't know if anybody's ever been to Pankey, but at night, after the classes, they'd have get-togethers, we talk about stuff. I remember the conversation one night was about eliminating hygiene. Should you eliminate your hygiene department? Because you just don't have time to take care of those patients if they like you and they stay. And even then, I didn't think that was such a hot idea. I don't know. It just didn't seem to make a whole lot of sense to me. But all that stuff, really isn't the way. I mean, granted, yes, we should try to be as good a dentist as we can be. I started earlier saying, why am I talking? I'm not an all-star. So I'm from Massachusetts, right? I could say I'm not Tom Brady. Everybody hates the Patriots, so I won't say that, okay? I'll say I'm not Patrick Mahomes. I think most people saw the Super Bowl this year. Everybody watched the Super Bowl. Patrick Mahomes is awesome. I mean, he is. I mean, even as a Patriots fan, you have to admire that guy. I guess who's his backup? We don't even know his name, so I'm his backup, okay? I'm not these guys with the $7 or $8 million practice. Did they play that Kia commercial across the country, the Smart Pack? Did everybody see that? No. If you're from Massachusetts, it was a riot. I mean, I don't talk like that. Most people really don't speak like that. A little bit, but it's. If anyone saw it, it's a pretty funny commercial. It's the car parks by itself. You get out, you push a button, and they had all the Massachusetts actors doing it. Adding associates. So over the years, I'd say I worked by myself. My dad retired for like 2 years. The first year I was there, he went to Florida for a couple weeks. The second year, I was there, he went for basically the winter, and he was supposed to come back to work. And like a week before he came back, he's coming back, he said, "I'm not coming back." And I said, "Are you sure? Maybe you could work a couple days a week? I don't know. I've been at this for a couple years, and it was fine. He had had enough. He was burned out, and he was. So I ended up working by myself. So that was like 19 for about almost 10 years. A classmate of mine from dental school, who we used to go to the Pankey and stuff with, we decided that maybe we should work together. He had a practice 2 towns away from mine, and my practice was bigger than his. So we decided he would come into my practice. So at the time, we were doing by ourselves, this is 2000, like $600,000 a year. So I figured, my math is pretty good. 600 is 1,200, right? So I figured we'd be doing 1.2 million when he came in. Well, the first year we got up to like 900 or so, 950. And that was the high water mark. We kind of started, we regressed. My wife, I didn't listen to her on this one. She didn't want me to go in with him to begin with, and she was right. Shouldn't have. It didn't work out. But the reason it didn't work out was we had no plan. I just assumed that if he came to work with me, again, we would double our practice. It didn't work, and that's the difference between, if anybody's thinking about bringing an associate on without trying to do what Chris said is talking about, I think it's a losing proposition. You have to have a plan for him to come in and be successful. So we worked together way too long. I paid him way too much, cost me a bunch of money. I've made my fair share of bad financial decisions over the years, and that was one of them. We didn't add any more hygiene. We didn't advertise. And in those days, really, we never really advertised. Had yellow pages. It was always word of mouth, and the fortunate thing was, where my dad had been there, and this is the town I live in, the town I grew up in. I mean, I worked on all my Little League coaches. I worked on, everybody. Teachers, my favorite teacher from 3rd grade, I used to work on her. And everybody knew us. And I got one of the pictures up there before where it said dentist or something, selectman. So I served 18 years in the Board of Selectmen in our town. And in New England, town government is Board of Selectmen, if you have a town, no mayor. So basically 3 people, like a 3-headed mayor. So I actually ran the first time against my former school bus driver in high school. He actually was the head of the school committee when I graduated high school, signed my diploma, and I crushed him. So people knew us in town, didn't really have to advertise, but all that ensured was that it was always going to be basically the same, because I wasn't adding anything. I wasn't adding the hygiene time. We couldn't take more people. We actually used to have, for a while there, we sort of stopped taking new patients. Is John still here? He might keel over, I think, if he hears me say that. And people would always ask, are you taking new patients? Because my schedule was booked out like 3 months, and we just had nowhere to put them. And that's fine, it's kind of the old model. Like, it's nice to look at your schedule and see that it's busy, but it doesn't do you any good. So anyway, ultimately, it didn't work out with my former classmate. It just never got busy enough. I find his dad was a dentist, and he had been working in his office, but not with them. He sort of had his separate practice before he moved in my office. And I told him, I said, why don't you just go back and work with your dad a little bit until we get this thing straightened out? And he decided he should leave, which was a good idea. It was fine. The only thing that was wrong was he tried to take a bunch of patients on the way out. So, I guess that's the ugly and the good, bad, and the ugly. We weren't even partners, but it just didn't work out. So after that, after he left, shortly thereafter is when, the world basically ended with the recession and the way the economy was. And, fortunately, we didn't lose a lot of patients. But again, just kind of treading water, not going up, not going down, just sort of surviving. So I tell you all this stuff because it leads us up to December of 2017. I got the mail one day, and I saw one of Chris Add's nice flyers sent to me, and I had never heard of Chris Add. And I read it, and the thing, of course, that struck me was the Bahamas practice. And I thought, well, what is that? And I'm getting older now. I'm thinking I can't work forever. And the typical model has always been, or not always, but has a lot of times been that, you work, and then ultimately you sell your practice. And some people would keep going full bore and then sell it, and their practice was worth something. But a lot of other people just sort of started tapering back as they got older. They work a couple days a week, and if they did go to sell their practice, it was basically worthless. And I know that people talk about that you shouldn't count on the value of your practice as retirement, but it's an asset. I don't care what anyone says. So you should try to maximize your asset. And then the even better part is when you start talking about the Bahamas practice, about not actually having to drill on teeth and still make money. I don't know about you guys, but that sounds pretty good to me. So I called and I spoke with Matt first. And there was no hard sell. They didn't have to sell me. I said, where do I sign up? It just makes so much sense. So I did. That was December 2017. So 2018, 2 years ago, started basically. And I remember my first meeting with Joe. We were up in Canada skiing. It's 4 hours from where we live. And I actually drove down one day and then drove back because Joe was in town on that day. And I said, I want to get going. So we sat down and we talked and just talked about, kind of mapped out what we were going to do, changes that need to be made. And I actually was wearing a sweatshirt or something that had my logo on it. And he said to me, how attached to your logo are you? I said, well, no, it's fine, whatever. He didn't like it. It wasn't very good. I thought it was pretty cool, but I said, I'm all in. And so they designed the new logo, which I like. And I don't know if people, do you guys do this? Like if you're in a different part of the country driving around My wife would say, like we were in Chicago, we were visiting our daughter in Wisconsin. There's a Chris ad practice right over there. You could see, you could tell. You know, they're not all the same, but they're similar. You know what's what. The changes that we made had them do the website, the whole thing with consistency across the brand, the logo. We added some hygiene time that first year. Basically tried to just be a little more efficient with the way we're running things. And just by not doing really much of anything, increased our revenues by 20% in that first year. Is that still on the same slide? Sorry, is it? Yeah, okay. So we had increased some new patients, but the problem was still didn't have a lot of places to put people, okay? And then started the associate search. And I have to admit, as I was thinking about this as I'm going along, I'm going to sound like an advertisement for Chris ad, but I mean, obviously, if we're here, it works. And I've really tried to do everything they tell me to do. Now, I don't always do it as fast as they say, but do it. So I started the associate search. I didn't know how to go about hiring an associate, and they even have if anyone's looking to hire an associate, they even have the template, the ad you need to run, all that stuff. And so that was in the summer of 2018, and got a few responses, nothing that was really all that promising. And as I go down here, talk about reasons for success. The reasons for success, just starting to do what Chris had to say, okay? Adding the time, that's to me, it's the biggest thing. The obstacles to success were just, and I as I was doing this, I was thinking, I'm making excuses, but real life gets in the way. So that summer, our daughter, our middle one's getting married, and we were doing a lot of work on our house. And in the first slide, I said I like to fix things. I do. I mean, I'm a pretty good carpenter, electrician. I can do lots of things, and I think a lot of dentists can do that. And we have a pretty big house. Needed a little bit of spiffing up to make it nice for our daughter's wedding. She did give us a 1.5 year lead time. So for basically 2 summers, especially summer 2018, my wife was sitting over there, and me and her sister and her sister's husband worked like crazy, and everything came out great. So I guess, it may be an excuse, and people could say, well, if you just had a few more patients, made some more money, you could hire somebody to do all that work. And, I suppose that's true, but we did all the work ourselves anyway. So, on the left, that is before the wedding. That's the back of our house. On the right, that's the wedding. So we bought the land. It was 6 acres of farmland in the town we live on the river. When I was growing up, that river in the background was polluted, so it smelled. It was bad, dead fish, all that stuff, different colors. Nobody would think about buying land on that river. Now you cannot buy it. We bought it a long time ago when it was cheap. But so anyway, that's my excuse for. I can't, I'm spacing on his name, but the last people who in 2.5 years went from 0 to 100 pretty fast. Yeah, I'm not so fast. It's taken me longer. Those are our excuses. So looking back in the first year, what would I do differently? I mean, not a whole lot. I guess because I didn't fight Chris at all. And I say that because I know that we as dentists, at least the ones I know, think we know a lot about a lot of things, okay? And sometimes aren't as open-minded as maybe we should be. But what they're talking about is accurate. So if you're not with them and you're thinking about it, I would be prepared to just listen and do as they say. So again, that first year, we're kind of laying the groundwork for as things were going on. So after the wedding, I say that my time was, I had broken down, but before September 29th and after, okay, that was my time frame. And the wedding was September 29th. So after that, just kind of ramped it up, ran the ad again. And this time, we got a response almost right away from a guy who'd been working in the next town, next city. And I talked to him on a Wednesday, and I asked him why he was leaving his job. And he said, well, I was fired. I said, oh, I already said they let me go. I said, well, why? He said, well, I came to work on Friday, just a few days before, and they worked a half a day. He said, and I sat down at my computer to write some notes, and I was locked out. And then the dentist owner, or one of the dentists, came up and said, oh, today's your last day. And what had happened was that he had been there for a few years. Another dentist, the dentist who owned it, had some health issues, thought he might not be able to practice, sold fast to somebody else, okay? And so I said to John, I said, well, why didn't he sell to you? And he said, well, I think he probably figured I have too much student loan debt and I wouldn't be able to buy the practice. So after a while, the new dentist who bought the practice, he wasn't busy enough, so he let John go. And we were at the conference in Detroit last year, and I can't remember who was speaking. I think it was there, and they were talking about not burning bridges. As an associate, you don't ever want to just leave a practice like that, and as a dentist, you don't just want to get rid of an associate like that. But they did. And it's their loss because he's a really good dentist. So, so the way things worked out for me anyway is that we ended up getting the right person for our practice. Whereas, 3 months before in the summer, he wasn't looking. He still had a job. So it worked out. I don't know if you can see on there. Look at that banner. So that's our office now. That banner should look familiar. I saw it once or twice today on somebody's building. But so the main road in the front there is really busy. I don't know how many cars go by there each day. It's got to be thousands, I would imagine. When I was growing up, and so that old building I showed you before was right in the same spot as that building. Actually, the right front corner is right where the right front corner of that building is there. And my brother, younger brother, and I, when we were growing up, my dad, he was a dentist, but I think he was from Kentucky. I think he was a frustrated farmer because we had a huge garden. And one of the things that we did was we grew a lot of corn, and we would, on the other side of that building there, the parking lot, we'd pick the corn. We only lived up the road, put it in the back of an old International Scout, drive down, set up. And I tell my patients this, not every day, but we'll be sitting there watching all the cars go by, and I'll tell people that, this used to not be that busy. And I say, we'd wait for cars to come, you sit there, you wait. And the corn was 90 cents a dozen, so you know how long ago that was. I say, now if somebody tried to do that, they'd get killed because the cars are just, it just wouldn't work out. But anyway, the banner, I don't know how much I had to pay for that. It wasn't a whole lot, but like they say, that thing gets eyes on it every single day. And it helps. So year 2, 2019, that's when brought in the associate. We did expand hygiene. Prime time, we started working some Saturdays. The whole thing with that, vertical and then horizontal, trying to get all the prime time hygiene appointments. We're getting there on, I forget, is it, do we have 4 hygienists on one day? Spacing out, yes. In the evening. Is it 1 day or 2 days? 1 day? Okay. So we're getting there. My office has 8 operatories. You may not look it, but we use both floors there. And so my objective, I was working a couple nights a week until like 6, and I'm cutting that out. My assistant wanted to cut it out anyway. And really, and I've been thinking about this lately, is that our office physically, we can handle 8 patients in the office. The parking would be an issue if we had more than that. So the thought that I have is, like, if people want to say, hey, listen, we can only come in the evening to get restorative work done, what we're going to tell people, my thought is that, well, we really want to be flexible and available for people to get their teeth cleaned. And physically, there's not enough space here. We can only do that. So that's my idea, is that ideally we'd get to the point where we had even like 8 hygienists, going at that time on the evenings and the Saturdays. And that was one of my stressful moments this morning, as I realized that we're behind the lagging here a bit. Should have been there by now. We could be. It's just a matter of going back out and hiring them. And again, I just saw one mistake that I made when I went to hire the extra time. So where we were is like, I think it was about $42, $44 an hour for the hygienist, okay? And so what I wanted to do is, I didn't want to hire somebody all day. I wanted to hire, I guess prime time I've heard today, I didn't realize it was 5:30. I thought anything like 4 or 5 and on was pretty good. But hire somebody from like 3 to 7, and I'd pay them $50 an hour, okay? Just because you're not there all day, you're not having you around, sitting around doing nothing. You're there when we're really busy. And I ran the ad. Don't do that without telling your existing staff, okay? First, I got a scathing, I can't remember if she sent me an email or if she actually gave me the letter. I think it was an email. It was nasty. She was pissed. That, hey, I'd like to apply for this job at $50 an hour. And, to me, I thought that I had made it clear, I thought I had, that, any of you all is welcome to work, these primetime hours more. And nobody took me up on it. So I would, if you could do anything like that, make sure you tell your existing staff, okay? That was a no-no. That was a learning experience. What I did to try to be right by them is all my existing staff, like the 5 to 7 and the 7, we start at 7 in the morning. Again, I should know this a few days a week. If they're working those hours, I just give them a differential for that, so I do pay them $50 an hour for those hours. That seemed to calm people down a bit. Year 2, we bring in the associate. You can see our sign. There it is, the new sign with the logo. Looks kind of like that one in Toronto, a little bit. But it's, I like it. It's a nice sign. And people notice it. Hey, you have a new sign? Yeah, we do. So, reasons for success. Actually, let me back up for a second. Again, if you're involved with Crusade, you know this stuff works. Okay, when you're starting out, if you haven't started with them, you might be a little skeptical. And I say, well, is this like Field of Dreams? If you build it, they'll come. I mean, is that all you have to do? Build it, they will come? Yeah, pretty much. It seems like if you build it, they'll come. So you need to add the time to do it. So those, I would say, would be the reasons for success. Again, doing more and more. Obstacles, just, I don't know. I must not want to be really successful or something because it's not going as quickly as those folks up in Toronto. But seriously, I mean, being full-time practicing dentist, and it's one thing I realized, it is tough to do everything. Again, I'm going my excuse-making mode here. You're working all the time, you're managing lots of stuff, and I think that we as dentists are pretty good at multitasking. For me personally, I think really to take it to the next level, and do I want to be an $8 million a year practice? I don't know, it sounds nice, but is 3 or 4 million a lot better than 1 million? Sure. So we're not that far away from that. We basically doubled in a couple years with really, really kind of, I know earlier John said it's kind of, if you don't have one part of the messaging, you're not going to succeed. Well, we've been successful, but we've not been as successful as we will be. But everything is in place. And the thing that I've realized too is that once, the first time doing it is the hardest, okay? Just for me, adding associate the right way was a little stressful, but the next time when we get busy enough that it makes sense to hire somebody else, it's not going to be that hard to do, okay? Because we've already been through it once. The last thing on there, I have dinner with John. So last fall, Andrea, who introduced me, we had a meeting set up that we were going to, we were going to meet. She's going to take us out to dinner. And she said, I'm gonna swing by. So she came by, and I was just about wrapping up. And I came out, and she was there. She said, I've got John with me. I said, oh. I said, who's John? Is it somebody new? Because, I mean, I didn't expect that, John was coming to Groveland to see me. Little old me. So she said, John. I said, really? So then my assistant, whose son was waiting for her, she said, there's some guy out front that he's walking around. I forget how he described him. He said he was sketchy, he looked gangster, he looked something. I can't remember what it was. He was wearing black, and he was walking around the building. He was admiring the beautiful sign and the logo. And so it was John. So I had to finish up, and Andrea and John went down to a local place about 15 minutes from where we are. It's on the river near the ocean. Nothing fancy, but it's a nice place. My wife and I like to go there, especially in the summertime. It's beautiful. The ocean, the sun on it. And So they were there, and they were already having a couple of drinks. And actually, they were having a drink, okay? I'm not sure how much they'd been drinking, but they had a drink when I got there. And John said, I hope you don't mind if we ordered a drink. I said, I don't, but you could have ordered me a glass of wine. And I didn't realize John knows a lot more about wine than I do. So he picked out a couple of nice bottles, or a nice bottle that we drank a couple of. Fortunately, my wife was driving. And for me, it was a lot of fun. It really was, because here, I'd get the emails, and I know that John puts up there, call me, text me. I hadn't taken him up on any of that. But here he was, and sitting next to me, and telling me his story about how he started and everything that he'd done, how he'd gotten to that point. And it was a lot of fun. It was really interesting. And the thing I said to him was, why didn't you guys send me a mailer 15 years ago? What took you so long? And then after a couple more glasses of wine, I asked him again, why didn't you guys send me a mailer a few years ago? I might not be here talking to you guys if I sent me that mailer 15 years ago. I definitely would be, I don't know if I'd be on the Bahamas, but I'd be somewhere. So it was a lot of fun, and I really appreciated John coming out. I'm sure maybe that's par for the course. Maybe everybody who's been with him longer knew that. I didn't know that. To me, he's like, what is it, the Wizard of Oz, kind of behind the curtain there. He'd pay no attention to him. It was good. It was a lot of fun. So plans for the practice. The stuff that they've been talking about all day long, okay? The hygiene, that's the key. We're going to start back up with the mailers. I didn't want to do the mailers yet because we didn't have where to put any place to put people, okay? So we're going to, when we get back, we're working on it. We just have to do it, okay? There's no reason not to. The stuff we added is full. We need to add more. Decrease my clinical time. I really want to. Already, the whole thing about having an associate, not that I give him all the crap stuff to do, because he's a good dentist, he can do everything, but I definitely don't do the stuff I don't want to do anymore, I've been doing this for 30 years, and I was great with kids, but, really, I had enough of that. He's great with kids. I told him, I'll work on like 4, 5, 12, and 13 occlusal. That'll be me. I got those things down pat. But no, I'm still in there, but I do want to reduce my time for a couple reasons. Just, I'm getting older, we want to do things. But I think I have to if I really want to be able to manage the practice effectively. I don't think you can work full-time as a dentist, at least I can't, and still do what you need to do to get the practice really running. So that's my plan. Retirement, actually, you know what? I don't know. People ask me that. I have a lot of people say, hey, are you thinking about retiring? And I don't have a plan as far as that goes. My plan, though, is a lot better than it was a couple years ago, because a couple years ago my plan was I would probably have to work until I can't. But now, with having someone there and expanding the practice, my plan is to continue to grow the practice, manage it, work some. I took the Fast Braces intro course last year, like last spring. Haven't done anything with it yet. To me, it's fascinating, and I'd love to talk to somebody about it. My concern was I would like to know a little more before I actually have a couple people I think I'd be able to start on, but I could see doing stuff like that. We do Invisalign. It works. This is even, I think, another option, maybe even better. It's faster. So doing what I want to do, managing the practice, and then figuring out the rest of my life. So we get to the end here. Why I chose to work with Chris Ad. That's what I've talked about. We all talk about money, and there's a lot of, and I've never been one to focus on money. It kind of drives me crazy. I've always thought that if you do a good job, it'll come, but you do have to pay attention to things. But there is a balance between time and money, especially as you get older. You have to be able to do the things that you want to do. What's your practice worth? Again, it can't hurt if you're grossing more. Okay, I think more is better than less, especially when you get ready to sell. Again, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? I'm not sure. So, again, Chris had a different model. It's research-based. It works. It really does. And one of the things I learned about my dad too is he retired at a young age. He was 60, almost 61, so that's like 5 years for me. And he's been doing nothing for almost 30 years. I mean, you can only play so much golf. You can only go, you have to, especially as people of our generation. Now, he didn't figure he'd live that long. He's from the South, forgive me, but they all smoked. He didn't so much. Diet wasn't great. His family didn't live that long. So he figured 60, I better get out while I can. Well, nowadays, if you're pretty healthy, you should live pretty long. So you need to have the income to do it too. And that's what this allows you to do. So you can cut back some, still make some money, and figure things out. Almost to the end. Let's hit that. Okay. Any Atlanta Falcons fans in the audience? I'm sorry, okay? So that's my son on the right. He is taller than I am, but I was like sitting or something on that. That's right after the Patriots completed that miracle comeback and beat Atlanta. Actually, I know everybody hates the Patriots. They think they're a bunch of cheaters and a bunch of losers and all this stuff. But as a Patriots fan, somebody in my generation, growing up, the Patriots were awful, okay? They never won. And even if they had a good team, they'd still lose. So my son, when he was younger, when the first time they played Philadelphia and actually beat them in the Super Bowl, he was, 6 or 7, and he was actually rooting for Philadelphia. And I said, what are you doing? He said, well, this is boring. He said, the Patriots always win. And I said, no, you don't understand. They never win. That's not how it used to be. So anyway, we were fortunate enough to be at that Super Bowl. And for me, as a father, as a husband, to me, work is secondary. My family is everything to me. And so being able to be at the Super Bowl with my son was awesome. Even if they lost, we actually went the next year when they did lose. It wasn't as much fun when they lost. But I can remember when the Patriots were way down, I looked over at him, and now he's 21 in that picture. And again, 5 minutes, I'm done. So one of the best things was before the Super Bowl, I don't know if anybody's ever been to the Super Bowl, but they kind of not rope off, but they have like a secure area all around. So you go through the gate, and then you're not in the stadium, but you're in the facility. And they had stuff that you could see. And we looked around, and I said, what do you want to do? He said, let's just go in. Now, this is like 3 hours before the game. And we were the first ones in our section, and he was just 21, so he could drink. And for me, we sat down for 3 hours, the two of us, had a few beers, and it was awesome. A lot of fun. So even if the Patriots didn't win, it would have been great, but the fact that they came back and won made it incredible. So I'm just going to close by saying this. If you're an old guy like me and you haven't started doing this, start doing it, okay? Because you'll be in trouble if you're not. If you're a young guy and got a mailer 15 years ago, like I should have, start. It works. It'll make your life much better. They didn't pay me to say that. I'm just saying that. So I think, as far as Gump would say, that's all I've got to say about that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, William. Appreciate it so much, man. And by the way, the check's in the mail, but that's another story.